Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The metallic clang of a wrench hitting concrete echoed through Griggs and Sons Repair as Marlon wiped sweat from his brow. 42 years had etched lines into his face that told stories of war, hardship, and quiet resilience. His calloused hands bore the marks of a life spent fixing what others broke. The November chill seeped through the garage's thin walls, but Marlon hardly noticed. Pennsylvania winters had toughened him over the years. "Closing up early, boss?" Juno asked, rolling out from under a Chevy with grease streaking his dark beard. Marlon nodded. "Thanksgiving at the in-laws. You know how it goes." Juno grimaced. They'd served together in Iraq, had seen things that bound men for life, but even Juno dreaded the tales of Marlon's in-laws. "Rather go back to Fallujah than deal with Glenn Beckett," Juno muttered, wiping his hands on a rag that a rare smile cracked Marlon's stoic expression. "At least in Fallujah, you knew who your enemies were." The shop stood as a testament to his father's legacy, modest but honest, just like the man himself. After Marlon's mother walked out when he was 8, it had been just him and Dad, fixing cars and building a reputation for straight talk and fair prices. The army came later, then Lorna, then the kids. Now the shop was his anchor in a life that seemed increasingly unsteady. He locked up, patting the worn sign above the door. Griggs and Sons Repair. The and Sons part had been his father's stubborn optimism, even before Marlon was born. Now with Wesley at 14, the sign finally made sense, though his son showed more interest in computers than carburetors. Home was quiet when he arrived. Lorna's car wasn't in the driveway. Probably already at her parents', he thought, preparing for the annual display of forced family harmony. The house they bought 10 years ago was modest by Beckett's standard, a 2-story colonial with just enough space for a family of 4. Inside, he found a note on the kitchen counter. "Took the kids early. Mom wanted help with preparations. Don't be late. With a blue sweater I bought you love," or even her name at the bottom. Just instructions, like he was another item on her to-do list. Marlon crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Their marriage had been cooling for years, but lately it felt like the temperature had dropped below freezing. He showered, changed, and stared at the blue sweater laid out on the bed. It was expensive, designed to make him look like he belonged in the Beckett world. He put it on, knowing the battle wasn't worth fighting. The mirror reflected someone he barely recognized, a man dressed for someone else's life. The drive to Lancaster took 40 minutes. Each mile brought a tightening in his chest. The Beckett house appeared on the horizon like a small castle, 3 stories of brick and arrogance, with perfectly trimmed hedges and a circular driveway where luxury cars were already parked. Marlon pulled his 10-year-old Ford truck beside Gavin's gleaming BMW and cut the engine. He sat for a moment, gathering himself for what was to come. Through the large front windows, he could see them all moving about, laughing, glasses of wine already in hand. His own family, Wesley and Clara, seemed smaller somehow in that setting. As if the grand house diminished them, he stepped onto the gravel driveway, the stones crunching under his boots. Before he could reach the door, it swung open to reveal Bonnie Beckett's surgically perfected smile. "Marlon, we were wondering if you'd make it." Her tone suggested she'd been hoping he wouldn't. "Everyone's inside. Do wipe your feet." The house smelled of expensive candles and roasting turkey. Family photos lined the walls. Beckett's at graduations, vacations, country club events. Despite 14 years of marriage, Marlon appeared in only one, tucked at the end of a hallway where guests seldom ventured. Voices drifted from the formal dining room. Lorna's laugh, the high-pitched one she used only around her family, rang out above the others. Marlon followed the sound. "Look who finally made it," Glenn Beckett announced when Marlon entered. The patriarch sat at the head of a table set with china that probably cost more than Marlon made in a month. "We were just discussing Gavin's new investment opportunity." Gavin raised his wine glass with a smirk. "Tech startup, getting in on the ground floor. Could triple my investment by next quarter." "That's wonderful," Lorna said, not looking at Marlon. Wesley and Clara sat quietly, already trained in the art of Beckett dinner politics. They brightened when they saw their father. "Dad," Clara called out, her 12-year-old face lighting up. Lorna shot her a look. Indoor voice, Clara. Marlon moved to hug his children, but Bonnie intercepted. Dinner's almost ready. Lorna, help me with the sides. Marlon, why don't you sit out in the garage? It's a bit crowded in here, and you know how the dining chairs are with sturdier builds. Glenn chuckled. He's used to scraps anyway. Lorna didn't defend him. Instead, she nodded and added, he likes the cold. It toughens him up. The words hit like a punch to the gut, but Marlon kept his face neutral. He'd learned in war to never show when you were wounded. I'll join you, Dad, Wesley said. Standing up, Clara followed. Me too. They carried their plates out to the unheated garage where a card table had been set up. The concrete floor was spotless, unlike Marlon's workshop, but the message was clear. This is where the Messier guests belong. Sorry, Dad, Wesley mumbled once they were alone. Marlon ruffled his son's hair. Nothing to be sorry for. I prefer honest company. They ate in relative silence, the sounds of laughter occasionally drifting from the main house. Neither Glenn nor Bonnie, and notably, not Lorna, came to check on them. Grandpa said your shop isn't doing well, Clara ventured after a while. Is that true? Marlon set down his fork. Business has been slower, but we're fine. Don't worry. Mom said we might have to move to a smaller house. Wesley added quietly. This was news to Marlon. Did she now? Before the conversation could continue, the garage door opened. Evangeline, Gavin's 16-year-old daughter, slipped in, her plate half full. Can I join the exiles? She asked with a wry smile. Pull up a chair, Marlon said. Evangeline sat, tucking her dark hair behind her ear. Unlike the other Becketts, she'd always been kind to Marlon. They're talking about money again. I can't stand it. Your dad seems excited about his investment, Marlon said neutrally. Evangeline rolled her eyes. Dad's always excited about something. Last month, it was cryptocurrency. Month before, it was some wellness beverage company. She lowered her voice. He's been weird since the divorce. Always trying to prove something. The garage fell silent again as they ate. Marlon noticed how his children relaxed away from the main house, their shoulders dropping, their smiles coming easier. It made his chest ache to think they felt the tension too. Then came the sound of tires on gravel. Through the small garage window, Marlon saw a black limousine pull up to the house. It was sleek and undeniably expensive, the kind that ferried CEOs and politicians. Out of place, even in the Beckett's affluent neighborhood. Who's that? Wesley asked, peering out. No idea, Marlon replied. They watched as a woman emerged from the back seat. She was tall and elegant, dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of real money, not the striving, desperate kind that the Becketts aspired to. Her posture was military straight, her movements precise as she approached the front door. Curious, Marlon opened the garage side door. The children followed him out just as the front door of the main house opened. The Becketts spilled out onto the porch, confusion evident on their faces. The woman from the limousine stood at the bottom of the steps, her gaze sweeping over the assembled family before landing on Marlon. Her face showed a flicker of recognition. Who owns this house? She asked, her voice clear and authoritative. Glenn stepped forward, chest puffed out. I do. Glenn Beckett. And you are? The woman ignored him, keeping her eyes on Marlon. I'm looking for Marlon Griggs. Everyone turned to look at him. Marlon stepped forward, conscious of the grease still under his fingernails despite his scrubbing. That's me. My name is Rhea Torelli, the woman said. I have legal business with the actual owner of this property. She paused, letting her words sink in. His name is Marlon Griggs. A collective gasp went up. Lorna, who had been standing with a wine glass in hand, went pale. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the porch step. What the hell are you talking about? Glenn demanded. This is my house. I've owned it for 20 years. Rhea Torelli opened a sleek briefcase and removed a folder. Perhaps we should discuss this inside, Mr. Griggs? Marlon, still trying to process what was happening, nodded. As he moved toward the house, he caught sight of Lorna's face. For the first time in years, she was looking directly at him, her eyes wide with what could only be described as fear. The Beckett's living room felt suddenly small with tension thick enough to cut. Rhea Torelli sat across from Marlon, while the rest of the family hovered around them. Glenn remained standing, his face flushed with anger. "This is absurd," he spat. "I demand to know what this is about." Rhea ignored him, focusing solely on Marlon. "Mr. Griggs, did you know a man named Eldon Torelli?" The name hit Marlon like a wave of memories. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew Eldon. Would you mind telling me how?" Rhea asked. Marlon felt all eyes on him. "It was about 7 years ago. I was driving home late from a job and saw a car broken down on Route 30. An older gentleman was trying to flag down help, but no one was stopping. I pulled over. The room was silent now. Even Glenn temporarily stunned into silence. The car was a Bentley," Marlon continued. "Battery was dead. Simple fix. I jumped it for him, but he seemed, I don't know, lost somehow. Said his driver had fallen ill, and he tried to drive himself home. He offered to pay me, but I refused. And then," Rhea prompted, "he asked for my name and number. Said if he ever needed repairs, he'd call. A week later, he did. After that, I'd go out to his place every few months. Check his cars, do basic maintenance." Lorna stepped forward. "You never told me about this." Marlon looked at her. "You never asked what I did with my time." The words hung in the air, a simple truth that laid bare the state of their marriage. "Eldon was my uncle," Rhea explained. "He passed away 3 months ago." "I'm sorry to hear that," Marlon said, and he meant it. The old man had been kind, interesting to talk to. They'd shared stories of war. Eldon from Vietnam, Marlon from Iraq. Sometimes they'd just sit in his massive garage, drinking coffee in companionable silence. In his will, Rhea continued, Uncle Eldon left specific instructions regarding his estate. A significant portion of his real estate holdings and liquid assets were to be transferred to you, Mr. Griggs. The room erupted. "This is preposterous," Glenn shouted. "Dad never mentioned any billionaire friend," Wesley said, eyes wide. Gavin laughed nervously. "This has to be a mistake." Rhea calmly opened her folder and removed a document. "This is a copy of the deed to this property, which was part of my uncle's portfolio. He purchased it 20 years ago through a holding company and leased it to Glenn and Bonnie Beckett." "That's a lie," Glenn sputtered. "I bought this house outright." "You made payments to Torelli Holdings," Rhea corrected. "The company my uncle used for his real estate investments." "You never owned this house, Mr. Beckett. You've been renting it for 2 decades, believing it was a rent-to-own arrangement." Bonnie collapsed onto a chair, her perfect facade cracking. "That's not possible. I have all the documentation here," Rhea said, unmoved. "Upon my uncle's death, ownership of this property transferred to Mr. Griggs, along with 14 other properties and approximately $62 million in various investments." The number hit the room like a bomb. 62 million. Marlon felt dizzy. "Why would he do this?" Marlon asked quietly that Rhea's professional demeanor softened slightly. "Uncle Eldon had no children, no family except for me, and I was already well provided for. He left a letter explaining his decision." She handed Marlon an envelope. "He said you were the only person in years who helped him without wanting something in return." Marlon stared at the envelope, unable to open it with everyone watching. He tucked it into his pocket. "This is a scam," Gavin declared. "We should call the police." "By all means," Rhea replied coolly. "My legal team would be happy to present all documentation to the authorities, including the fact that the Becketts have been falsely claiming ownership of this property on tax documents for years." Glenn went from red to white in seconds. "Now wait just a minute. As the new owner," Rhea continued, addressing Marlon, "you have certain decisions to make, particularly regarding the current occupants." The implication was clear. Marlon could evict the Becketts, his in-laws, his wife's parents, the people who had looked down on him for 14 years, who had relegated him to the garage on Thanksgiving. He looked at Lorna, who stared back with an expression he couldn't quite read. Was it fear? Calculation? For the first time, he wondered if she'd ever really loved him at all. "I need some air," Marlon said, standing abruptly. Outside, the November air bit at his face, but it felt good. Clarifying. He stood on the immaculate lawn, staring up at the house's house now, apparently and tried to make sense of what was happening. Footsteps approached from behind. He expected Lorna, but it was Wesley and Clara who appeared at his side. "Dad," Wesley's voice was uncertain. "Is it true? Are we rich now?" Marlon put an arm around each of his children. "I don't know exactly what we are right now, buddy, but we'll figure it out together." Clara leaned against him. "Does this mean we don't have to sit in the garage anymore?" A laugh escaped him, surprising in its genuine warmth. "No more garage dinners. That's for sure." Inside the house, he could see the Becketts in frantic conversation, Rhea standing apart with her professional calm intact. Lorna paced, running her hands through her hair in a way he hadn't seen in years. It was the gesture of a young nurse he'd fallen in love with before the Beckett polish had covered over her realness. "What are you going to do?" Wesley asked. Marlon took a deep breath. "What needs to be done?" When they returned inside, the atmosphere had shifted. Glenn and Bonnie sat huddled together on the couch, their earlier bombast deflated. Gavin stood by the window, phone in hand, furiously texting. Evangeline watched the proceedings with undisguised fascination. Lorna approached Marlon, her voice low. "We need to talk. Privately." "Later," he said. "Right now, I need to speak with Rhea." The dismissal was gentle but firm. Lorna stepped back, a flicker of something respect in her eyes. Rhea was gathering her documents when Marlon approached. "I imagine this is overwhelming, Mr. Griggs. Take your time. All the paperwork is in order, and my team is at your disposal." "Thank you," Marlon said. Then he turned to face the Becketts, his in-laws, his betrayers. "Lorna," he said, his voice steady, "your parents need to pack. This house isn't theirs anymore." Bonnie gasped. "You can't just throw us out. We're family." "Family," Marlon repeated. "Family doesn't banish each other to the garage. Family doesn't mock someone's livelihood or treat them like dirt." Glenn stood shakily. "Now see here, Marlon. We can work something out. We've always treated you fairly." "No," Marlon cut him off. "You haven't. But that doesn't matter now." Lorna stepped forward, eyes suddenly wet with tears. "Marlon, please. Think of the kids. They'll come with me," he said simply. "You made your choice long ago, Lorna. Every time you stayed silent when your father insulted me. Every time you chose them over us." The room fell silent. Even Gavin had stopped texting. "I'll give you 30 days," Marlon continued, addressing Glenn and Bonnie. "That's more generous than you deserve, but it's the right thing to do." "And where are we supposed to go?" Bonnie asked, her voice breaking. "That's not my problem," Marlon replied. Not unkindly, but firmly. "You've had plenty of time to save up, considering you haven't been paying a mortgage all these years." He turned to Rhea. "I'd like to see the rest of the documentation when it's convenient. For now, my children and I are going home." Wesley and Clara stood by the door, wide-eyed but standing tall. Evangeline gave them a small, encouraging smile. As they walked out, Lorna called after him. "Marlon, wait. We need to talk about this." He paused but didn't turn around. "We will, but not today." In the truck, driving away from the Beckett house's house, now Marlon felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in too long, he was the one in control. "Dad," Clara asked from the back seat, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hung in the air. Marlon looked in the rearview mirror, seeing his daughter's serious eyes. "I don't know yet," he answered honestly. "But whatever happens, you two are my priority. Always." Wesley nodded slowly. "Good. Because you didn't yell, you didn't cry. You just handled it. That was pretty cool, Dad." Marlon reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder. Then he drove on, leaving the Beckett world behind, the taste of something like freedom on his tongue. Marlon sat in a sleek downtown office, feeling out of place despite his new suit. Across the massive desk, Rhea Turelli reviewed documents with focused efficiency. 2 weeks had passed since Thanksgiving, and his life had transformed into something unrecognizable. "The transfer of the remaining properties is proceeding smoothly," Rhea said, not looking up from her tablet. "There's some paperwork for the offshore accounts, but nothing complicated." Marlon nodded, still struggling to comprehend the extent of his inheritance. "I appreciate your help with all this. I wouldn't know where to begin." That's what Uncle Eldon paid me for, Rhea replied, then paused. I'm sorry, that sounded cold. The truth is, I'm glad to do it. Uncle Eldon had good judgment in people. He didn't give second chances often, but when he did, she trailed off, and Marlon filled the silence. How did you find me? After he died, he left detailed instructions. The will was explicit: find Marlon Griggs, owner of Griggs and Sons Repair. He said you'd need time to adjust, so I was to wait 3 months before contacting you. A rare smile crossed her professional demeanor. He didn't mention it would be during a family Thanksgiving dinner. Your timing was dramatic, Marlon admitted. So I gathered. Rhea set aside her tablet. Have you read his letter yet? Marlon touched his jacket pocket where the envelope still resided. Not yet. You should. It might help you understand. She hesitated. Have you decided what to do about your wife? The question was direct, but Marlon had come to appreciate Rhea's straightforwardness. Lorna's been calling nonstop. Texts, emails. She wants to work things out. And you? Marlon stared out the window at the city below. I'm not sure there's anything to work out. Before Rhea could respond, her assistant buzzed through the intercom. Ms. Torelli, there's someone here insisting on seeing Mr. Griggs. A Mrs. Griggs. She's quite persistent. Rhea raised an eyebrow at Marlon. Your call. Marlon sighed. Let her in. Might as well get this over with. When Lorna entered, Marlon barely recognized her. Gone was the polished Beckett daughter, replaced by someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back hastily, her clothes wrinkled. Marlon, she breathed. I've been trying to reach you. I've been busy, he replied, not rising from his chair. Lorna glanced at Rhea. Could we have a moment alone? Ms. Torelli stays, Marlon said firmly. Anything you have to say can be said in front of her. Lorna's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Fine. Marlon, what are you doing to my parents? It's cruel. They're older. They have nowhere to go. They have 3 weeks left to figure it out. Marlon cut in. And they're hardly destitute. Your father's law practice does well enough. They've lived in that house for 20 years. All their memories. Memories of looking down on others. Of treating people like they're beneath them. Marlon shook his head. I'm not interested in preserving that legacy. Lorna's voice lowered to a desperate whisper. What about our marriage? Our family? We can work through this, Marlon. I've been struggling with depression. It affected my judgment. Stop. Marlon's voice was quiet but firm. Don't lie to me, Lorna. Not anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm not lying. I need help, Marlon. I need you. You need my money, he corrected. The money changes everything, doesn't it? That's not fair. Isn't it? Marlon leaned forward. Where was this concern for our marriage last month? Or the month before? When was the last time you looked at me, really looked at me, before you found out I was worth millions? Lorna fell silent, tears streaming down her face. The kids told me you were planning to move to a smaller house, Marlon continued. Why would that be necessary if we weren't having financial problems? It was just an idea, a way to save money, or preparations for a divorce. Marlon's calm was unnerving. Were you planning to leave me after Thanksgiving, Lorna? Her silence was answer enough. Ms. Torelli, Marlon said. Could you give us a minute? Actually private this time. Rhea nodded and stepped out, closing the door behind her. When they were alone, Marlon finally removed the envelope from his pocket. I read Eldon's letter last night. Lorna watched as he unfolded a single sheet of paper. He wrote that he'd been watching me for years. Not just when I visited, but other times too. He had people keeping an eye on me, making sure I was the man he thought I was. Marlon's voice was devoid of emotion. He mentioned seeing my wife at Riverside Plaza 3 months ago, having lunch with her brother. So they seemed very interested in some documents. Lorna went pale. What are you talking about? Bank statements, Lorna. For a joint account I never opened. Marlon set the letter down. Eldon had his people look into it. They found 3 accounts in our names that I never signed for. Money was moving from my business into those accounts, then disappearing. Marlon, I can explain. Gavin helped you forge my signature, didn't he? Set up accounts to siphon money from the shop. Marlon's voice remained steady. How long were you planning to leave me? How much did you take? Lorna's tears stopped abruptly. Her face hardened. What was I supposed to do? Stay married to a mechanic forever? Watch my brother and my friends move up while we stayed stuck in that little house. You have no ambition, Marlon. No vision. The truth, finally. It should have hurt more, but Marlon felt only a dull confirmation of what he'd already suspected. The business was failing. Lorna continued, a note of defiance entering her voice. I was securing our future, my future. The kids' future. By stealing from me. By taking what I deserved after 14 years of marriage, she snapped. Do you know what it's like being married to someone so ordinary? Someone my parents constantly remind me could have been so much more if he'd just tried. Marlon studied his wife, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. You never loved me, did you? Not really. Lorna's anger faltered. I thought I did at first. You were different. Solid. After all the rich boys who just wanted to play, you seemed real. But not enough. Not for the life I wanted. She straightened, composing herself. So what happens now? You divorce me and take the kids. That depends on what else you've been doing, Marlon said. How deep does this go, Lorna? Is it just the accounts? Or is there more? A flicker of fear crossed her face. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. Marlon stood. Ms. Torelli has a team investigating every aspect of my finances now. They'll find whatever's there. Better if it comes from you first. Lorna seemed to calculate her options, her mind visibly working. Finally, she said, I need a drink of water. There's a pitcher on the side table. As Lorna moved across the room, Marlon watched her. The way she walked, the way she held herself. It was all performance, he realized. Had always been. If I tell you everything, she said quietly, will you be reasonable about the divorce? About the kids? I'll be fair, Marlon replied. I won't be manipulated. Lorna nodded, seeming to accept this. The accounts were Gavin's idea. He said it was just insurance. In case things went bad between us. He helped set them up. How much? About $30,000 over 2 years. Marlon absorbed this. His business had been struggling, and now he knew part of the reason why. What else? He pressed. Lorna sipped her water, buying time. Gavin borrowed against the shop. Used the business as collateral for some investments. They didn't go well. The revelation hit Marlon harder than expected. You put my father's business at risk for Gavin's get-rich-quick schemes. They weren't schemes. They were opportunities. Lorna's defense was weak even to her own ears. Anyway, it doesn't matter now, does it? You're rich. You can pay it all off. Marlon stared at her, amazed by her audacity. Get out, Marlon. Get out now, before I say something I'll regret. Lorna hesitated, then gathered her purse. At the door, she paused. What about the kids? They're staying with me for now. We'll work out formal arrangements through lawyers. My parents have 3 weeks, not a day more. After she left, Marlon remained standing, processing everything. When Rhea returned, she found him gazing out the window. Are you all right? She asked. No, he answered honestly. But I will be. He turned to face her. I need to see exactly what they've done to my business. And then I need to fix it. Rhea nodded. My team is already on it. But Marlon, you should know with what you've inherited, you don't need to worry about the shop anymore. You can start fresh, do anything you want. Marlon shook his head. That shop was my father's. It's mine. And someday, it might be my son's if he wants it. I won't let them take that from me. Understood. Rhea's professional demeanor returned. In that case, we have work to do. The next week brought revelations that would have broken a lesser man. Gavin had indeed borrowed heavily against Griggs and Sons, using forged documents and Lorna's assistance. The loans totaled nearly $200,000 money that had been poured into a series of failing investments. The shop was on the verge of bankruptcy, a fact Lorna had hidden from Marlon for months. But the financial damage was only part of the story. As Marlon pulled into the shop parking lot Monday morning, he found Juno waiting outside, face grim. We've got a problem, Juno said without preamble. Half our regular customers canceled their appointments. Phone's been ringing with people pulling their business. Marlon frowned. What happened? Your brother-in-law happened. Juno handed Marlon his phone, open to a local community Facebook page. Started Friday night. The post from Gavin Beckett was a masterpiece of character assassination, warning to local community. My brother-in-law, Marlon Griggs, owner of Griggs and Sons Repair, is experiencing severe mental health issues stemming from PTSD. He has become erratic, aggressive, and is making dangerous threats against family members. While I sympathize with his condition, I cannot in good conscience recommend trusting him with your vehicles or patronizing his business until he receives the help he needs. As a combat veteran myself, I understand these struggles. Combat veteran? Marlon growled. Gavin never served a day in his life. That's just the start, Juno said, scrolling down. It gets worse. Further posts alleged financial improprieties, shoddy workmanship, and hinted at violent tendencies. The comments were filled with concerned community members, many vowing to take their business elsewhere. This is slander, Marlon said quietly. No question. Juno pocketed his phone. But it's working. Town small, word spreads fast. Inside the shop, the phone rang. Marlon answered to hear another customer canceling. I understand, he said mechanically. Thank you for letting us know. After hanging up, he turned to Juno. How many cancellations? 15 so far. Mostly regulars. Marlon ran a hand over his face. They're trying to destroy what's left of the business before we can fix it. What do we do? Juno asked. Marlon stared at the shop around him. The tools his father had collected, the signs on the walls, the decades of honest work this place represented. We fight back, he said simply. Not Gavin's way, with lies and manipulation. Our way, with truth. That afternoon, Marlon called Rhea. I need a lawyer. A good one. And I need records of everything Gavin and Lorna did. You already have lawyers, Rhea reminded him. An entire team at your disposal. I need someone local. Someone who understands small towns and how they work. 2 days later, Marlon sat across from Patricia Winters, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for ruthlessness disguised by grandmotherly charm. She reviewed the evidence compiled by Rhea's team with methodical precision. This is quite the case, Mr. Griggs, she said, removing her reading glasses. Identity theft, fraud, defamation. Your wife and her brother have been busy. Can we prove it? Marlon asked. Patricia smiled thinly. Oh yes, the paper trail is remarkably clear. They weren't expecting anyone to look closely. I want to sue them, Marlon said. Not for the money. I don't need that anymore. For the truth. I want everyone to know what they did. That could be arranged. Patricia made a note. What about your wife? Will you be filing for divorce? Yes. And I want custody of my children. Patricia nodded. Given the evidence of her criminal activity, that shouldn't be difficult. But be prepared. People like your wife and her brother don't go down quietly. They'll fight dirty. Let them, Marlon said. I've got nothing to hide. The lawsuit was filed the next day. By evening, it was the talk of the town. Gavin's posts disappeared from social media, but the damage was already done. The shop stood nearly empty for days, with only a few loyal customers braving the rumors. Marlon worked anyway. He opened every morning at 8, closed at 6, and did whatever jobs came in with the same careful attention he always had. In the evenings, he focused on his children, making sure they understood what was happening without burdening them with adult problems. Is Mom going to jail? Clara asked one night as Marlon tucked her in. I don't know, sweetheart, he answered honestly. What she and Uncle Gavin did was wrong, but the courts will decide what happens next. The kids at school say things, Wesley said from the doorway. That you're crazy. That you stole Grandma and Grandpa's house. Marlon patted the bed, and Wesley came to sit beside him. People say a lot of things when they don't know the truth. The truth is, I inherited that house from Friend. And I'm not crazy. I'm just standing up for what's right. Like when you were a soldier? Clara asked. Marlon nodded. Something like that. As the days passed, Rhea became a constant presence in Marlon's new reality. She managed the logistics of his inheritance with ruthless efficiency, but also checked in regularly about the lawsuit and the children. Her cool professionalism gradually gave way to genuine concern. You could shut down the shop, she suggested one evening as they reviewed documents in his kitchen. Take some time. Figure out what you really want to do now. Marlon shook his head. That shop kept me sane after the war. Gave me purpose when I needed it most. I'm not abandoning it because times are tough. Rhea studied him with newfound respect. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who'd take the money and run. Buy a yacht, move to an island. She shrugged. Most people would. I'm not most people. No, she agreed quietly. You're not. The preliminary hearing for the lawsuit came faster than expected. The courthouse was packed small-town curiosity, bringing out even those with no direct connection to the case. Marlon sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia beside him. Across the aisle, Gavin and Lorna huddled with their attorney, a slick corporate type from Philadelphia. Judge Hanson, a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings, called the court to order. Before we begin, she said, I want to be clear that I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties, and I'm deeply troubled by what I've seen. This case involves serious allegations that go beyond civil matters into potential criminal territory. Patricia rose. Your Honor, my client is primarily concerned with clearing his name and securing the future of his business. While we believe criminal charges may be warranted, we're focused today on the civil aspects of this case. The judge nodded. Very well. Proceed. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Gavin and Lorna's actions. Patricia presented bank records, forged signatures, loan documents, and timestamped screenshots of Gavin's defamatory posts. She called witnesses who testified to the sudden whisper campaign against Griggs and Sons. When it was the defense's turn, their strategy became clear. Paint Marlon as unstable, cast doubt on the inheritance, and portray Lorna as a concerned wife, trying to protect family finances from her husband's poor decisions. Mr. Griggs suddenly comes into millions from a mysterious benefactor no one had heard of before, their lawyer argued, then immediately turns against his family? This is clearly a man experiencing some kind of break from reality. Murmurs ran through the courtroom. Marlon remained stoic, but inside, doubt crept in. Would people believe this narrative? Then Patricia called her final witness, Rhea Torelli. Rhea took the stand with the same composed authority she brought to everything. Under oath, she detailed her uncle's relationship with Marlon, the legal documentation of the inheritance, and the investigation that had uncovered Lorna and Gavin's financial schemes. Ms. Torelli, Patricia asked, in your professional capacity overseeing significant estates, have you ever encountered a situation like this before? Yes, Rhea replied. Unfortunately, sudden wealth often reveals who people truly are. In my experience, those who are dishonest before money enter the picture rarely become honest after. When the defense tried to cross-examine her, Rhea's answers were precise and devastating. She referred to specific dates, documents, and legal statutes with such authority that even the judge seemed impressed. At the end of the day, Judge Hanson made her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find clear and convincing proof of fraud, identity theft, and deliberate defamation. Mr. Beckett's social media posts were malicious attempts to destroy Mr. Griggs' reputation and business. She turned a stern gaze on Gavin. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. Gavin paled visibly. Lorna clutched the table edge. As for the civil matters, the judge continued, I am granting Mr. Griggs' request for a restraining order against both defendants. Mr. Beckett is ordered to publish a full retraction of his false statements. Both defendants are prohibited from making any further public statements regarding Mr. Griggs or his business. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, reporters from local papers clustered around. Marlon, and used to attention, kept his comments brief. All I wanted was the truth, he told them. Now people know it. As they walked to the parking lot, Rhea beside him, he spotted Lorna standing alone by her car. Their eyes met across the distance. For a moment, he saw the woman he'd once loved vulnerable, human. Then her gaze hardened, and she turned away. Are you okay? Rhea asked quietly. Marlon nodded. Better than I've been in a long time. That night, after the children were asleep, Marlon sat on his back porch, looking at the stars. The old envelope with Eldon's letter lay open in his lap. One line kept coming back to him. You helped me when no one else would, asking nothing in return. That kind of decency is rare in this world. It deserves to be rewarded. Simple words that had changed everything. Not just his financial situation, but his understanding of himself and the people around him. The back door opened, and Wesley stepped out, wrapped in a blanket against the December chill. "Can't sleep?" Marlon asked. Wesley shook his head. "Heard some kids talking after school. About Mom. They said she might go to jail." Marlon sighed. "It's possible. What she and Uncle Gavin did was against the law. Do you want her to?" The question was direct, honest in the way only children can be. Marlon considered his answer carefully. "What I want is for actions to have consequences," he said finally. "Good or bad. Your mom made choices that hurt people. She needs to face those consequences, whatever they are." Wesley absorbed this. "You didn't yell in court today. Everyone else was getting all worked up, but you just sat there, like you knew it would be okay." Marlon smiled slightly. "I wasn't sure it would be okay, but getting worked up wouldn't have helped. Is that from being a soldier?" "Partly." Marlon looked at his son, seeing himself at 14 confused, trying to understand the adult world. "In war, you learn that panic gets people killed. You stay calm, you think clearly, you do what needs to be done." Wesley nodded slowly. "I like that. Doing what needs to be done." They sat in companionable silence for a while, just father and son under the winter sky. "Dad," Wesley asked eventually, "what happens now?" Marlon put an arm around his son's shoulders. "Now we rebuild. The shop, our lives, everything. Together." It was a promise he intended to keep. The for sale sign on the Beckett house went up in early January. Marlon had given Glenn and Bonnie their 30 days, then an additional 2 weeks when Bonnie had called in tears, begging for more time. But by mid-January, they were gone, relocated to a rental property half the size of their previous home. Marlon stood in the empty house, footsteps echoing on hardwood floors. Despite its grandeur, it felt hollow, devoid of warmth. This place had never been a home. He realized, just a monument to pretension. "What do you think?" Rhea asked, standing beside him in the cavernous living room. "I think I never want to live here," Marlon replied. "You could sell it. Property values in this neighborhood are excellent." Marlon nodded. "That's the plan. Use the money for something that matters." In the 2 months since Thanksgiving, his life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. The lawsuit had concluded with a decisive victory. Gavin, facing criminal charges for fraud and identity theft, had fled to Florida, abandoning his daughter Evangeline and what remained of his reputation. Lorna had avoided jail time by cooperating with authorities, but had lost her nursing license and her standing in the community. The divorce proceedings were underway, with Marlon granted temporary full custody of Wesley and Clara. Lorna was permitted supervised visitation visits that grew increasingly tense as the children's loyalty clearly lay with their father. Griggs and Sons Repair was slowly recovering. After the truth about Gavin's smear campaign came to light, customers began to return. Marlon used a small portion of his inheritance to upgrade the shop's equipment and hire 2 additional mechanics, both veterans he'd met through a support program at the VA. But the most surprising development had been his evolving relationship with Rhea Torelli. What had begun as a purely professional connection had grown into something more complex. Not romance, both were too guarded for that, but a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experiences. "I've been thinking about what you said," Marlon told her as they walked through the empty Beckett house, "about using the money for something that matters. And I want to start a nonprofit, a garage that trains veterans in auto repair, gives them marketable skills, help transitioning back to civilian life." Rhea considered this. "A worthy cause. Your friend Juno could help run it." "That's what I was thinking." Marlon paused and would have been Glenn's study. "We could use part of the proceeds from this house to fund it. The rest goes to the kids' college funds." "Very practical." Rhea nodded approvingly. Uncle Eldon would approve. As they continued their tour, Marlon's phone rang. Wesley's name flashed on the screen. "Everything okay, bud?" Marlon answered. "Mom's here," Wesley said, his voice tight. "At the house. She says she needs to talk to you." "She's not doing great, Dad." Marlon sighed. "I'll be home in 20 minutes. Don't let her inside until I get there." After ending the call, he turned to Rhea. "I need to go. Lorna's shown up unannounced. Want me to come with you?" The offer surprised him. "No, but thanks. This is something I need to handle alone." When Marlon arrived home, Lorna was sitting on the front steps, her appearance a shadow of her former polished self. Her clothes were clean but rumpled, her hair pulled back carelessly. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Wesley and Clara watched anxiously from the living room window as Marlon approached his estranged wife. "This isn't your scheduled visitation day," he said, keeping his distance. Lorna looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "I got evicted. My apartment. I couldn't make the rent." Marlon absorbed this. "What about your parents?" She laughed bitterly. "They're barely speaking to me. Blame me for everything, losing their house, the scandal, all of it. And Gavin, in Miami, supposedly starting fresh. Won't return my calls." She wiped her eyes. "I have nowhere to go, Marlon." The old Marlon might have relented immediately, might have offered her the spare room out of lingering loyalty or guilt. But that man was gone. "What exactly are you asking for?" he said quietly. "I don't know," she admitted. "Money, I guess. Or a place to stay for a few days. And then what? What's your plan, Lorna?" She stared at her hands. "I don't have one." Marlon sat down beside her, maintaining a careful distance. "You know what I realized these past months? You always had a plan. From the day we met, you knew exactly what you wanted and how to get it. You planned our wedding, our house, our kids' schools, everything." Lorna nodded slowly. "The only thing you didn't plan was being happy with what you had." Marlon continued. "With who I was." "I know that now," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Marlon. I really am." He studied her, looking for the manipulation that had colored their relationship for years. But all he saw was a broken woman facing the consequences of her choices. "I'll help you find a place," he said finally, "and I'll cover 3 months' rent. After that, you're on your own." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve." "This isn't about what you deserve," Marlon cut her off. "It's about who I am, who I choose to be." Inside, Wesley and Clara watched the exchange with apprehension. When Marlon returned, they bombarded him with questions. "Is Mom coming back?" Clara asked. "No," Marlon answered firmly. "Your mother is going through a tough time, and I'm helping her find a new place to live. But this is our home now, yours, mine, and Wesley's. Will we still see her?" Wesley's question held a complexity beyond his years. "That's up to you," Marlon said honestly. "She's still your mother, and she loves you in her way. But I won't force you to spend time with her if you don't want to." Clara hugged him fiercely. "I want to stay with you." Marlon held his daughter close, heart full. "Then that's what we'll do." Spring came slowly to Pennsylvania, but by April, the town had shed its winter gray for tentative green. The Beckett house sold for well above asking price, and Marlon used the proceeds exactly as planned, establishing the Griggs Veterans Training Program and securing his children's educational futures. The grand opening of the expanded Griggs and Sons Repair and Training Center was scheduled for a sunny Saturday in late April. The old garage had been renovated and expanded, with a new wing dedicated specifically to the nonprofit training program. Juno, now officially Marlon's business partner, had taken charge of recruitment, bringing in 6 veterans for the inaugural class. As Marlon surveyed the transformation, he felt a quiet pride that had nothing to do with the money that had made it possible. This was about legacy, his father's and his own. "Nervous?" Rhea asked, appearing beside him in a rare casual outfit, jeans, and a light sweater instead of her usual suits. "A little," Marlon admitted. "Public speaking isn't my thing. Just be yourself." It's worked pretty well so far. The event drew a larger crowd than expected. Local businesses that had once shunned Griggs and Sons came bearing gifts and congratulations. Veterans groups showed up in force. Even the mayor made an appearance, eager to associate himself with the positive press the project was generating. Notably absent were the Becketts. Glenn and Bonnie had retreated from public life, their social standing devastated by the revelations of their financial deceptions. Lorna, now working as a receptionist at a medical office 2 towns over, had declined her invitation. Gavin remained in Florida, facing extradition for the charges he'd fled. But Evangeline came, standing somewhat awkwardly near the refreshment table until Marlon spotted her. "I wasn't sure I'd be welcome," she said as he approached. "You're always welcome here," Marlon assured her. "How are you doing?" She shrugged. "Staying with Mom since Dad left." Started college in the fall. State school, all we can afford now. If you need anything, I'm okay. She smiled slightly. Just wanted to say I think what you're doing here is cool, and that I'm sorry for everything my family did to you. You didn't do anything, Marlon said. You don't owe me any apologies. As the event progressed, Marlon found himself surrounded by well-wishers. Wesley and Clara moved through the crowd with confidence, proudly showing visitors around the facility their father had built. Juno introduced the veteran trainees, each with their own story of service and struggle. Finally, it was time for Marlon to speak. Standing before the gathered crowd, he felt a momentary panic, then a strange calm. Thank you all for coming, he began simply. This shop has been part of our community for over 40 years. My father opened it with the belief that honest work and fair dealings would see him through. He was right. Marlon glanced at Wesley, who gave him an encouraging nod. Some of you know that I've experienced some changes in my life recently. A chuckle ran through the crowd at the understatement. What matters isn't the money or the property. What matters is what we choose to do with the opportunities we're given. He gestured to the veterans standing nearby. These men and women served our country. They sacrificed in ways most of us can't imagine. Now, they're looking for a chance to rebuild their lives, just like I had to do when I came home from Iraq. This center is for them, a place to learn, to work, to find purpose again. As he continued, Marlon felt something shift inside him, the last piece of armor he'd carried since the war, since Lorna's betrayal, finally falling away. He wasn't defined by what had been done to him, but by what he chose to do now. After the speech, as people mingled and explored the facility, Rhea found him again. That was good, she said. Really good. Thanks. Marlon watched his children laughing with some of the veterans. I never thought I'd be here, you know? Owner of all this, speaking to crowds. Life has a way of surprising us. Rhea hesitated, then added, I'm being reassigned. The firm wants me back in New York. The news hit Marlon harder than expected. When do you leave? 2 weeks. She met his eyes directly. Unless I have a reason to stay. The question hung between them, unspoken but clear, before Marlon could respond. Wesley called out to him. Dad, come quick, Clara's showing everyone how to change oil. Marlon smiled apologetically at Rhea. Rain, check on this conversation? She nodded, a rare warmth in her eyes. I'm not going anywhere. Yet, as the day wound down and the crowd thinned, Marlon found himself standing outside the shop alone. The new sign gleamed in the setting sun. Griggs & Sons Repair and Veterans Training Center. Juno joined him, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Quite a day. Yeah. Marlon accepted the coffee gratefully. Think it'll work? The training program? Absolutely. Already got a waiting list for the next class. They sipped their coffee in companionable silence. Your lawyer friend, Juno said eventually. She's into you. Marlon nearly choked. Rhea? She's just. If you say just a friend, I'm going to hit you with a wrench. Juno grinned. I've seen how she looks at you. How you look at her. It's complicated. Only if you make it complicated. Juno clapped him on the shoulder. Don't waste time, man. We've both seen how short life can be. Inside, Clara was showing Evangeline how to use a socket wrench, her small hands confident on the tool. Wesley was deep in conversation with one of the veteran trainees about computer diagnostic systems. They looked happy, Marlon realized. Truly happy. Maybe for the first time in years, as the last guest departed, Rhea approached him again, car keys in hand. I should get going. Have dinner with me tomorrow, Marlon said suddenly. Just us. No business talk. She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually serious face. I'd like that. After she left, Marlon gathered his children and the remaining staff for a final toast. To new beginnings, Juno proposed, raising a paper cup of soda. To scraps and steel, Marlon countered. The things we salvage and rebuild. As they clinked cups, Marlon looked at the people surrounding him. His children, his friend, his employees. Family wasn't about blood, he realized. It was about loyalty, about standing by each other when it mattered most. Outside, the spring evening settled over the town. In his pocket, Marlon carried Eldon's letter. a reminder that kindness sometimes returned in unexpected ways. He thought of the road ahead, raising his children, growing the business, exploring whatever this thing with Ria might become. For the first time in years, the future looked bright that he stepped outside one last time. Looking up at the shop sign, his father's legacy, now his, and someday, perhaps his son's. Scraps in a steel, he murmured to himself. Not anymore.